Hey, welcome back to the Angel Baby Show. It's Elise here, and I am about to show you. I'm super excited. I interviewed director Dimitri Logothetis. He is directing an upcoming film, Gunner, which stars Morgan Freeman, Luke Hemsworth, Arnold Schwarzenegger's son, and he talks about it a lot in the interview and just gives some great inspirational career tips. So I'm super excited to show you that. And then after the break, we're also going to have an interview with an actress in the upcoming Mel Gibson movie. So don't go away. Okay. Hi, I'm Elise for California Life, and today I have the pleasure of talking about the upcoming film Gunner with the writer and director Dimitri Logothetis. Hi, how are you today?
Good, Elise. How are you?
I'm good, and I'm so excited to talk to you and really honored because just with looking over the span of your career and the movies you've done, this upcoming film, Gunner, stars the Academy Award winner Morgan Freeman and Luke Hemsworth and Arnold Schwarzenegger's son. It's just star-studded with amazing actors, and I would love to hear from you a little bit more about what Gunner's about. From what I've read, it kind of reminds me of Taken a little bit, and I just want to hear from you.
It is. It's got some similarities in that um, you have a ranger played by Luke Hemsworth who is a lifer. So he has been a career soldier. And he, after several tours of duty in Afghanistan, he comes back to his home in Virginia, and he's got these two boys. One of them's a teenager, the other one's still a kid.
Mhm.
And he doesn't know them. And he had disappeared for about a year. Nobody'd heard from him. So his family thought he was dead. And so he decides to take them out on a camping trip to get to know them a little better. And he's very awkward,
Mhm.
when it comes to real life, which a lot of soldiers who have spent their life being a soldier are. Once they get back into the civilized world, it gets really tough for them. So he takes them out on a camping trip, and they run across uh, this lab where they're making fentanyl. And
Mhm.
so the two boys get captured by the bad guys, and then unfortunately for them, they captured the kids of the wrong man. And
Okay.
so he single-handedly goes on a quest to save his children, to bring them back. And in so doing, he connects with them,
Mhm.
doing what he does best, you know.
Right. Right.
Um, and then Morgan Freeman plays the head of the uh, Fen crew, the major drug lord, et cetera.
Mhm.
And his son, who's a wonderful actor, plays the part of Dobbs. He's the one that kind of interfaces the most with Luke's character. Um, so that's basically the story.
No, and I think that's so interesting that now Luke Hemsworth's character, who's always fighting, he's now fighting for family and something not related to war. And it's really interesting. And I wanted to ask more about how was Luke as an actor? What was it like working with him on set?
Well, he's a terrific actor, actually. He went to the Academy of over there in Australia, where
Mhm.
they've turned out the Academy of Actors, the Actors Academy, pardon me, think of the Academy here. And they've turned out, I think, several Academy Award winners from there. So he's very serious when it comes to that. He really digs into character
Mhm.
and focuses on character. And then I lucked out because I was planning to double him. I've got an action group that I put together when I first did the first remake of Kickboxer, and they're Thai. And my Thai action team they do completely different action than most martial arts action.
Mhm.
The Chinese approach it in a different way. The Japanese approach it in a different way. And the Thais have a completely different look to them. You can see that it's martial arts, but it's a little different, the hand-to-hand combat. And so I brought this team out, and I've worked with them now. This is the the fourth movie that we've done together. They've worked on Extraction. They've worked on Gray Man. They've worked on my kickboxer films. And so I was planning to double Luke. But Luke is a boxer, former boxer. And
Oh,
so his
wow.
timing was incredible. So he really picked up those action sequences very well. And I didn't have to double him at all. And so he's a pretty athletic guy, you know.
Yeah, wow. He's doing his own stunts. That's really impressive. I don't know how an actor could do that. And I kind of want to, my next question was about the bad guys. And I think it's really fascinating because I've seen Morgan Freeman play God in a movie before. And he's like the most likable, beloved person on earth. I don't know. What was it like casting him or framing him as the bad guy in Gunner?
Well, I did that on purpose because I don't believe that bad guys, are creepy. I don't believe
Mhm.
that bad guys I don't believe, first of all, that they think they're doing anything wrong,
Right.
And I think that they have to be likable. I think your favorite bad guys in any movie are the likable ones, the guys that you like. And I don't think how you can not like Morgan Freeman. So, and he's just such a poetic actor. I mean, he
Mhm.
delivers these lines in such a way that it was written by Gary Scott Thompson, who's a wonderful writer who wrote the
Mhm.
Fast and Furious franchise. And I didn't even expect the delivery that Morgan brought to it and the character that Morgan brought to it. So it was really a pleasure.
That I love that point, because I also agree. My sister and I, we always love the villains and the bad guys, and it's you kind of root for them sometimes in a weird way. So it'll definitely be exciting to see that twist.
Well, listen, I mean, all the bad guys in your life that you have been, and I mean this word not in a dating way, seduced
Mhm.
by, where you
Mhm.
have actually bought into their spiel, let's
Mhm.
say, okay, they've been seductive, they've
Right.
been charismatic,
Mhm.
and you listen to their point of view and you think, oh yeah, okay, well that makes
Yeah.
sense, and then you think, well, wait a minute, this is not right.
No, they deceive you. They trick you. It's
Yeah.
That's so spot on. And I kind of wanted to go back to what you said about working with Gary Scott Thompson, who worked Fast and Furious, obviously has a very like epic vision with his films. And I also want to ask you a little bit more about your own like artistic taste, but how did you two blend together? Would you say you guys are very similar? Are you very different in terms of just how you visioned Gunner at the
Well,
beginning?
I've been doing action films for the longest time,
Hmm.
and I came from action TV,
Hmm.
and so is Gary. Um, but the similarity that we have is the action is an obstacle. That's
Hmm.
all it is. And I'm drawn to characters that don't stand a chance. They don't have a chance
Yeah.
at all of overcoming these obstacles. They're outnumbered, they're outmanned, they're they're out of everything, and consequently, it doesn't really matter because they have a code. And usually, it's all about family, whether it's their individual family, where they're blood related, or their chosen family, where it might be friends, or it might be somebody that they're just going to stand up for. And everybody oftentimes will accuse me of being nostalgic in terms of my approach to story. And I say to everybody, well, look, I mean, if you like John Wick and you really paid attention to John Wick, the very first John Wick movie, which is one of my favorite, okay,
Mhm.
they killed his dog, and then he went on this whole vengeful thing, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, if you really paid attention to what happened, they killed the only thing that he had that was left of his wife that he was completely in love with.
Mhm.
Of course, he was attached to the dog, but the dog meant so much more.
Right, yeah.
Okay. And he was a bad guy. John Wick was a bad, bad guy. But the one thing that he had, the redeeming quality that he had, is that he loved his family. You
Mhm.
go back to The Godfather. He could get away with anything because he said, I don't apologize for anything that I've done because I've done it entirely to protect my family. Okay. And that's something that we can all relate to today. We're so powerless in every other way in life. until it comes to somebody. I mean, I don't know if you have brothers or sisters or anything like that, but I think, you know, at the end of the day, that's the one thing that you'll stop everything else you're doing, and you'll say, you know, whether we get along or not, I've got to protect these people, you know?
Right, right. I think
So,
that's a great, like, the underdog and the family values. That's really like kind of comes down to like a hero story almost. And I was wondering I feel like everyone loves the underdog, but do you have a particular reason why that's for your action films and action TV and action film, why you've gravitated towards stories about an underdog?
well, I mean, perhaps, yeah, I don't want to get really introspective, but, you know, I'm an immigrant. I came here when I was 6 years old.
Hmm.
My father, we immigrated from Greece, was an auto mechanic, and you know, he worked hard his whole life.
Right.
And you know what I've done in terms of becoming a filmmaker and being a writer and working in television and working in films, producing, directing, etc., was always something that everybody said would never happen.
Hmm.
I don't have any family contacts. I don't know anybody. I don't really stand a chance. It doesn't really matter that I'm pretty good at it, et cetera, et cetera. And I never paid attention to any of it, really. I just kept
Yeah.
marching forward, saying, why not me? I don't
Hmm.
understand. What does that mean? So perhaps I relate to these
Hmm.
characters in that, you know, I think that nobody should ever crush you in terms of what your hopes and dreams are, you know.
Hmm.
And I think if you can live vicariously through these guys, and of course, you know, I give you action so that you can actually see the things that hopefully you're going to ride on this character's shoulders,
Hmm.
and you're going to say, yeah, that's right. Yeah, of course, he's got to do it this way, you know,
Yeah.
against all odds, so to speak. And I think that's probably why I relate to these characters.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that because I mean, looking over the span of your career with someone who didn't have connections and didn't have like a guided direct path into this career. I mean, you've done box office hits like Kickboxer, you've worked with Mike Tyson, you've worked with Nicolas Cage. Um, what would you say you did or you credit your success to, looking back as someone who didn't have everything handed to them,
Well, I mean, not giving up.
not
The
giving up?
one thing, you know, I gravitated, I mean, one of the very first things I ever did was this little documentary called Champions Forever. And it was at the end of the career of Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier, George Foreman, Larry Holmes, and Ken Norton. And I put these world champions together who had already retired, with the exception of George, who was coming back, okay,
Mhm.
in his 40s because he was broke. And I sat down and I interviewed all of them, and I made this documentary. We made it for about a couple $100,000, and we never expected it to become
Right.
a huge selling documentary at the beginning of documentaries, because documentaries weren't popular. Now they're very popular, you know.
Mhm.
And I think we were number one in the world for about and certainly number one in the charts in
Mhm.
terms of videos back in the old video days, um, for about 10 years running. Okay.
Mhm.
But the one thing I learned from all these guys is they came from nothing,
Yeah.
and they lost a lot. Okay. And they failed a lot, but
Mhm.
they kept getting up off the mat, and they kept fighting, and they kept swinging, and they never took no for an answer, you know.
Mhm.
And so I think that's the best thing to do is you just, you know, the world isn't easy to maneuver, especially when you've got pretty big dreams.
Mhm.
So what?
Yeah. No,
Just
that's
don't take no for an answer. Don't let somebody, you know, beat you up, so to speak, so that you don't move forward every day.
yeah, that's a great thing to hear. I think any young person loves to hear something like that. Um, I guess my next question would be, it's interesting that the first thing you ever really did was a documentary. Because I feel like a lot of kids, when they're aspiring filmmakers, they'll make like a short horror film with their friends or something. And I guess just what did you grow up watching as a kid that really influenced your style and really made you want to make action films? Is there like a favorite movie or just a moment where you watched something and you thought, I want to do that?
You know, I just I started out as an actor,
Mhm.
and I did very well in my teens. And I worked on a movie called New York, New York,
Okay.
as an actor with Robert De Niro and Liza Minnelli. It was Martin Scorsese who was the director,
Mhm.
and I was in college still, and I was writing this English paper on set, waiting to work, and so he walks behind me, and he looks over my shoulder and he says, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm just trying to finish this short story for my English class." And he says to me, he goes, "Let me see it." And I said, "No." I said, "It's not ready." And he said, "Oh, come on." And I said, "No." I said, "You can't." So he takes it, okay,
Wow.
grabs it, and he takes off, and I get all aggravated.
Yeah.
And then he comes back and he says, "You know what, Dimitri?" Says, "You're a pretty good writer." He says, "You're a pretty good storyteller." He said, "You should, he said, I think you should go to film school." And I said, "What's film school?" Because film school was a new thing back then.
Oh, really? Okay.
And so he writes me this letter. I think he had his wife at the time do it, recommending me to film school. So I get this incredible director writing this
Yeah.
letter to go to film school. And I thought, film school, because I kind of liked acting and I was doing really well.
Hmm.
He said to me, and I don't mean this in a bad way at all. He goes, "Oh," he goes, "you think way too hard to be an actor."
Yeah.
And so to go back to your question, I think, I used to watch the Burt Reynolds films all the time. I used to watch the Clint Eastwood films all the time.
Mhm.
I used to watch, all of the Magnificent Seven. I watched the Japanese,
Mhm.
the Seven Samurai, the Godfather. All these movies that probably influenced, and of course Taxi Driver, and
Right.
and the Marty Scorsese stuff.
Hmm.
All that stuff influenced me to become a filmmaker because um, I guess I like to approach things that are very complicated and difficult to pull
Yeah.
off.
Yeah. I mean, that story you shared is, I'm so glad I got that in this interview. I mean, that's really amazing. And I kind of know what you mean about certain people, they start with acting or they start with writing, but they're actually, maybe they're too introspective and they're too thoughtful to be an actor, and they're better at directing people, or it's, I think they all kind of come together though. And I think what makes a really good director is someone who's acted before, and they understand a little bit about that side of the work and their side of the work, and they
Well,
can.
I understand actors and I
Yeah.
appreciate actors, and I know that those actors, for the most part, most really serious actors are naked, and
Mm,
they get out there and they really put themselves out there. Okay.
mm,
And so they are very brave because they try things and it might not work,
mhm,
or it might work, but they try things, and you got to be pretty brave to put yourself out there to do that kind of stuff, because all the criticism usually hits you.
mhm.
It hits me next, but it hits
Yeah.
you. And I've always said to everybody, I said, look, I said, whatever you do, not everybody's going to like it. They
Mhm,
don't have to. You have to develop a pretty thick skin about it.
mhm,
And I also remember this when I had a really great acting coach from who was head of the department at El Camino College, and he said to me way back when, he put me in a play. I didn't even want to do a play, and he put me in this play and gave me the lead. And I was reading these reviews. I had these really terrific reviews, right? And then I had this really bad review. And he
mhm.
comes in and he says, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm just reading it." He goes, "You're reading a bad review?" He goes, "Give me that." All these people who snatch the papers away from you all the time, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he says, "Don't ever read a bad review." He goes, "What's the matter with you?" He said, "It's
Mhm,
one person's opinion." He goes, "Who gives a shit?" He
mhm.
said, "Here." And he tears it up and throws it away. He goes, "It's not going to do any good." He says, "You don't know if the guy was in a bad mood. You don't know if the guy's girlfriend yelled at him that night. You don't know if he was drinking. You don't know anything." He says, "So just read the good reviews." He goes, "You're really good. Listen to me." And he goes, "Just move on." Okay.
And do you abide by this now, or do you ever read?
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. Look,
Don't.
uh, people can criticize you 15 different ways from Sunday, right?
Mhm.
What difference does it make?
Right.
What difference does it make? You should only go with the people that really lift you up, don't you
Mhm.
think?
I completely agree. And this reminds me so much. And I have to ask you this because
when you were describing an actor that's vulnerable and out there and doesn't care, I can't help but think of Nicolas Cage.
Oh yeah.
And I just would love to know a little bit about, he's like one of my favorite actors of all time. So just a little bit about working with him and his
Well,
process.
he's incredible. He showed up on set, and here's this science fiction, martial arts,
Right.
crazy character. And he comes up to me and he says, Dimitri, he said, what can I do to help you tell this story? He says, what do you need from me? How can I help? Okay. And he said, just tell me what you need. And then he immediately went to work with the stunt guys right afterwards. And we discussed his character over and over and over again, but he jumped right in after flying for 22 hours or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then he worked his ass off and he developed this incredible character who is funny.
Mm-hmm.
He took a lot of challenges with it. He brought an awful lot to the movie itself. And the movie ended up, I think we were released on the week of Thanksgiving during COVID,
Mm-hmm.
second year of COVID, I think. And we were number 4 on Netflix in America and number 1 in Canada on Netflix. So we it's 200 million subscribers on Netflix. So we crossed over. We were watched by everybody.
Mm-hmm.
We did very, very well, but he's really serious about what he does. And a lot of people, give him shit for it, but you have to appreciate someone who works that hard.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because you don't get any better by not doing anything.
Right.
He's very much like a European actor. European actors, by the time they're finished their career, they've done 120, 130 movies,
Yeah.
And I think that the American side, they end up doing about 30 or 40.
Mm-hmm.
And on the Europeans, you'll remember 8 or 9 great movies that they made, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they got there because they developed their craft.
Yeah. That's exactly, because he says in like The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, he's like, well, I'm an actor and that's my job, so I'm always going to be working. I'm always going to be making a film, and I just love him and his commit to the craft. But,
and he's committed to artists. I mean, he's one of those guys that knows so much about painting and painters. He knows so much about composers. He knows so much about music. He really dives into the artist's life, so to speak.
Yeah, well, thank you. That was just my own. I had to ask about that, but yeah. So it was great talking to you today. And does Gunner have a release date yet, or?
They're thinking about the new year.
Okay.
So I'll probably deliver the film. I'm in the middle of editing it now. I've got editors in the other room. And probably deliver it in the next few months. And then they'll probably set it up for around January of next year. So we'll see who's going to take it out. But it's looking, this is a wonderful group of actors.
Mm-hmm.
That I've assembled, including the fellows that play the kids,
Mm-hmm.
and they're going to carry you through the whole thing, because I think that you're really going to be able to relate to them, and you're going to root for them, which is the most important thing. So,
right. Well, I'm so excited. You couldn't have a better cast, or already a really heartwarming story, and I'm super excited to see it next year. Thank you so much for talking with me today.
Thank you for taking the time. If you're around, we'll invite you to the premiere if you'd like.
Oh my God. Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah, we'll probably have a premiere probably around October-ish, November-ish. So you should keep in contact with.
That was just my interview with Dimitri Logothetis, the director. I loved hearing his advice on his movie and just his career. It was so fun to talk to him. I was really nervous, if you can't tell. But next up, I'm super excited. I also got to interview the actress, Ariel Racine. She is a social media influencer, and she starred alongside Pete Davidson in a movie, and now she's talking about her upcoming Mel Gibson movie called Confidential Informant. She gives great advice on positivity and self-love. I learned a lot from her, and I hope you do too.
Sorry, my computer froze. I'm trying to stop the recording.
I was like, wait, am I supposed to say something?